The Elder Scrolls IV: Oblivion. Truthfully, I don't even know where to start with this one. So if I come off scattered, you'll have to forgive me, but for this game, there's a lot to unpack. I have a lot of history with Oblivion, so I guess I'll just start by giving you some background on that. Let's just jump right into it. Bethesda Game Studios is most prominently known for the Elder Scrolls series. I would say these days they're equally renowned for Fallout, but there was a time before Fallout in the modern consciousness of young RPG players, at least young at the time RPG players like myself, who started their gaming in the early 2000s. That time for me was dominated by The Elder Scrolls. The Elder Scrolls is a series of role-playing games with a handful of spin-offs. The games in the series are The Elder Scrolls Arena, released on March 25th, 1994, less than 2 weeks before I was born. The second game was The Elder Scrolls II Daggerfall, released on September 20th, 1996. The third game was The Elder Scrolls III Morrowind, released on May 1st, 2002 for PC, and later Xbox on June 6th, 2002. Followed up by The Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion, March 20th, 2006, and finally The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim, released on November 11th, 2011, and every 3 months subsequently. Let me give you some background on my initial discovery of the subject of this video, The Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion. Now, for some context, I started playing The Elder Scrolls in 2004 with Morrowind on Xbox. I am what is sometimes affectionately, and sometimes not so affectionately, referred to as a Morro Boomer in the Elder Scrolls community. It's a title that I wear with pride personally. Morrowind opened the doors for me as far as open-world RPGs go. While I had played Final Fantasy VIII extensively as a kid, Morrowind was open-world in a different scale and a different way to explore. And for quite a few years, this was a game my friends and I obsessed over. Now, when I was a kid, unfortunately for me, I grew up quite poor. I had a single father who was raising a lot of us by himself, and at the time, money for something like an Xbox or Xbox 360 or a $40 video game just wasn't in the cards. As much as it sucked, I was fortunate in the sense that a lot of my friends near me had Xboxes and 360s, and luckily, they were into the same games I was. I was pretty much the friend who found games and showed them to my friends, and eventually they would get them and we would just play them together. My secret weapon at the time was Game Informer magazine. I didn't have much, but I had Game Informer. That was the one thing I had that nobody else in my area seemed to, probably because they were too busy playing games where I was just stuck tormenting myself reading about them. I remember knowing exactly when my magazine was due to arrive, and back in the day, very similar to now, there were always slight discrepancies with the mail, so sometimes I would get my magazine a day or two early, sometimes a few days late. This specific month, which I don't recall, so forgive me, my magazine was running late, of course. Eventually it showed up, much to the delight of a young me. Then I saw it. The Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion. Now, this appears to be the only picture I can find on that Game Informer Oblivion cover. In my head, I had a different picture in mind, but I can't seem to find any others, though. I'm thinking I may be remembering images and pictures from the cover article, but since I don't have this issue anymore or access to it, I can't say for sure. I seem to remember a fully armored humanoid figure in, like, Daedric armor, perhaps a Dremora, but I don't remember all that clearly. I will tell you what I do remember, though. A boundless excitement and enthusiasm to tell my friends and every single other human I came across about this wonderful discovery. I don't recall what year this issue was released. I want to say 2005, because I feel like our little group of nerds at school had been playing Morrowind for quite a while at this point. At least to the point where we were starting to learn the little nuances about the world of Tamriel, like how the Dark Elves are actually called Dunmer, for example. The great Dunmer discussion at the lunch table in elementary school I remember vividly, and even now, 20 years later, I still think back on it very fondly. Sorry for the sidetrack. Like I said, this one is a sentimental one to me. You'll have to forgive me here, though, because at this point I'm going to skip over quite a bit of my history with this game. I shared many great adventures with a friend who owned this game across the street from me as a kid, but This individual no longer speaks to me or engages with me in any respect, despite many years of me reaching out, and thinking about it just bums me out.
Find him and close shut the jaws of Oblivion.
You want to know something that doesn't bum me out, though? My brother Brian. Brian got on the Elder Scrolls train a bit later than me. Where I started with Morrowind, he started with Oblivion. This game was foundational in our relationship, truthfully. It gave us something to explore together, bond over, and gave us endless hours of enjoyment. Be it actually playing the game, sitting in the basement writing short stories, or hitting each other with sticks pretending we were our Oblivion characters. We also spent hours, and I mean hours, discussing the finer points of the lore and histories of Tamriel. From the nature of the gods to the wars that plagued Tamriel's past, it was a veritable cornucopia of delight and excitement for us. Even now, 19 or 20 years later, we still discuss the Elder Scrolls lore and reminisce on how much we love Oblivion. And I say that not in an exaggerating way, like it pops up in discussion every once in a while. No, it's quite frequent. It pops up like every week. Sometimes twice a month if we're busy being adults, but discussing lore is a regular topic for us, much to the displeasure of everyone in our lives. Now, we grew up in Michigan together, but for high school I moved away to Southwest Florida. I haggled with my father. I would go to Florida if he got me an Xbox 360. Now, I planned to go anyway, but hey, I needed something to bargain with here. He acquiesced, and upon arriving in Florida and setting up the apartment we would be living in, he got me a 360 and 2 games: Civilization, Revolution, and Oblivion. Moving away from my brother was very difficult for us. I didn't have a cell phone, so we had no real options to communicate with one another. Having Oblivion at that time was bittersweet because I was enjoying the game greatly, and I finally had my own copy, my own characters that were all mine to play and explore with. Not a character I had at a friend's house I could play sometimes, but my own character that I could play in the comfort of my own personal space. The downside was, my father and the people in my life had no real interest in my love of fantasy, and I didn't know anybody living down here at the time, so I quite literally had nobody to share my enthusiasm and adventures with. On the flip side of that septum, my brother was sadly experiencing a similar situation. Fun adventure, and not a soul to share it with. These last 2 sections are very long-winded ways of introducing my connection to this game, but I hope it explains to you my enthusiasm and love for Oblivion, a love that even all these years later has never faded. As I stated in my Why I Love Fallout New Vegas video, COVID killed my desire to play a lot of these games. Because I had so much time, I played these games in quick succession. Well, relatively speaking, of course. Then a while back I migrated to the PC from console, and the control schemes were hard for me to grasp on keyboard and mouse. I know this may sound idiotic to PC players, but cut me some slack. I've been playing Oblivion on Xbox since 2006, so if you see some jank or just bad gameplay, I apologize. Keyboard and mouse controls for this game are new to me, and breaking almost 2 decades of that habit will be hard. Upon booting up the game, though, I don't think any Bethesda game has an opening or tutorial section this iconic. I'm willing to accept that this is my own nostalgia here, but let me explain. There are very few things I remember about that old Game Informer article, but let me tell you what I do recall. I recall a good portion of it being a short story about the tutorial section of the game. I know it introduced us to a character who I believe was a Breton. It mentioned him cleverly using a trap to hit a goblin and causing it to land in a humiliating position, as well as the Ayleid ruin of Vilverin across the water. 2 things I always dreamed of seeing with my own 2 eyes, and when I finally did see them when playing at a friend's house, I couldn't believe I was finally seeing them in person, so to speak. Vilverin being so close for me personally makes Oblivion's step-out moment the very best in the series, and the interactivity makes it the best tutorial. I really think the icing on the Oblivion cake there is getting to use those traps, like the logs or that swinging spike trap thing, and also, who hates when Patrick Stewart is the only thing keeping you from being executed by a bodyguard high on his own authority?
Damn it! It's that prisoner again! Kill him! He might be working with the assassins!
No, he is not one of them. He can help us. He must help us.
As you wish, sire.
Come closer. They cannot understand why I trust you. They've not seen what I've seen.
Bear with me now, this section's going to be a long one. But upon stepping out, this view right here still blows me away. Admittedly, it's a huge contrast to the tutorial because up until this point, your character had spent their entire life in jails and sewers. They probably didn't even know there was this much green in the whole galaxy. And I think that's what lends to its strength and impact, more so than any other game in my opinion, aside from maybe Morrowind. But if I eventually cover Morrowind, I'll try to remember its step-out moment as well. I would say the beauty of Cyrodiil falls into one of two categories, unironic beauty and ironic beauty. The unironic beauty to me lies in Cyrodiil's outdoor landscapes, cityscapes, and environments. The cities all have really interesting visual styles, from the coastal docks of Anvil to the shacks of Leyawiin, the frigid Nordic-style homes of Bruma to the beautiful alien architecture of the Imperial City. I remember as a kid, my brother and I being so mystified, looking at the plants and trees. We couldn't believe how real they looked to us. I can even recall many times that we would look back at each other in disbelief and just say something like, "This looks realer than real life." The ironic beauty of Oblivion lies in its characters and some of its natural indoor environments like caves and ruins. Maybe this is just my fond childhood memories trying to put a positive spin on this, and like I said earlier, I'm willing to accept that I'm seeing this entirely with rose-tinted goggles. But there is a bizarre beauty about the characters. I wish I could explain it, but I really have no idea why I feel that way. You know, maybe it is nostalgia. Just the looks on their goofy faces and some of the absolutely stupid expressions they make bring me endless joy. Yeah, nowadays they look like Play-Doh, like if it came to life and was trying to approximate what living sentient beings would look like in this universe. But even so, I have a soft spot for them and all their goofy expressions. Moving on from that, let's talk about some of the common indoor spaces you're likely to come across. Ruined forts, Ayleid ruins, caves, abandoned mines, and the Gates of Oblivion. I would say these dungeons hold great nostalgic value for me, but I will say, over the years and subsequent playthroughs, they have grown in many ways to irk me. Now, my focus on these videos is always to be positive and share things I love about these games, but on the off chance someone who has never played this game is watching this video, just know the mines and caves are very samey, as are all the ruined forts, Ayleid ruins, and Gates to Oblivion. Even despite the very samey nature of these indoor dungeons, I can't deny the joy I always felt cresting a hill and seeing the giant white stones of an Ayleid ruin. They were really beautiful on the outside, and I'd be lying if I said I didn't covet exploring them in my youth. Fun fact, and a little bit of a sidetrack, my brother and I used to really be into like magical theory as it pertained to the Elder Scrolls, so in our spare time as kids, we would wander around with these giant sticks we found and pretend we were on expeditions into ruins, searching for Varla stones and Welkin stones, which just turned out to be nicer looking rocks that we found in the yard. In game, we always pilfered these ruins for the stones as well because we thought they would help us understand the nature of magic and the greater mysteries of Aetherius. Long before we were using the internet or even internet competent, we would sit around and write these elaborate fan theories in our spiral notebooks, or at least as elaborate as a bunch of kids with limited understanding of the lore were capable of producing. The ruined forts are neat in theory, but done much better, I think, in Skyrim. I never understood why so many forts were abandoned, or why the Imperial Legion had no outposts outside of the cities. I understand that in peace times you don't need to maintain all these fortresses and garrisons, but man, at least some of them should have had a detachment in them. But I digress. I think they could have been more fun if they weren't underground dungeons, but instead actually felt like abandoned castles. I can't say for certain, but I'd bet this was just a technical limitation due to the hardware at the time. Still, I lament what it could have been. I don't need to cover the caves and abandoned mines. They are exactly what you think they are. Whatever you're picturing in your head, you have it right. Just watch out for goblins and vampires. The biggest feature of this game was the gates to Oblivion. These Eye of Sauron style portals were direct links between the mortal plane of Mundus and the demonic realm of Oblivion. More specifically, the Deadlands, the realm of Mehrunes Dagon, Daedric, Prince of Destruction. He's kinda like Khorne from Warhammer. These gates, in my opinion, are still graphically impressive to this day. Upon approaching an Oblivion gate in the wild, the sky turns blood red and are usually patrolled by a handful of leveled Daedric creatures. Once you enter a gate, the entire landscape changes. You're all of a sudden in another plane of existence, a land entirely dissimilar from what you would have grown to know by that point. The Deadlands are a place where battle and death are around every corner, monsters and Daedra patrolling, looking for the unwary or underprepared traveler. According to UESP, there are 7 different Oblivion layouts, meaning the shape and paths of the world that you take to activate the gate at the center. Some of these are specific quest layouts, like the Great Gate, which I won't elaborate on for fear of a 20-year-old spoiler alert, but each one of these requires you to battle through different Daedric creatures, navigate natural hazards like vicious flora and bouncing Betty landmines, all in hopes of reaching the tower that contains the Sigil Stone. A sigil stone being the anchor of sorts that holds the gate open. Grabbing it causes the gate to collapse and you appear outside of it, at the ruins where the gate used to be, and you can then use the sigil stone to enchant items. Side note, I was always very dedicated to the blades, so I always enchanted my blades armor and themed the names after each of the gods: the katana of Talos, the boots of Stendarr, the gauntlets of Mara. You get the picture. I was quite the devout little role player in my younger years, which is probably why I love Knights of the Nine so much to this day, but that's a different video topic entirely. The cities of Cyrodiil are among my favorite Bethesda has ever designed. Visually, and in terms of the NPCs who inhabit them, more so than any other game Bethesda has ever made, the cities felt lived in and felt alive and bustling. The NPC conversations, while limited in their scope, went a long way for making me personally feel truly immersed. I really felt like I was in Cyrodiil, listening to people go about their daily lives. Sometimes these conversations would help me understand the world I was inhabiting a lot better. Other times they were just hilarious because the AI would take a strange left turn on the conversational track, but that chaos made it feel so real to me. I recall my brother and I listening to the NPCs talk so we could hear news from the other provinces specifically. I was always listening for news of my beloved Morrowind, and hoping that all the friends I made during my adventures on the island of Vardenfell were weathering the storm of this Oblivion crisis. Another aspect of the cities I loved besides the conversations of the NPCs was the architecture of each city being very different. It was something I loved in Morrowind. You had Imperial towns, Ashlander camps, Dunmer villages, Telvanni towers, and your major cities like Vivec and Mournhold. The real standout cities to me in Oblivion are Bruma, Shadenhall, Skingrad, Anvil, and of course, the Imperial City. Not to say there aren't things to love in Leyawiin, Bruma, Coral, or Breville, those just happen to be my favorites. While this isn't an important detail, I just felt like sharing. Having played a lot of Bethesda games, it's actually really interesting to see how things evolve in their design philosophy over time. Because while the cities felt lived in and very real, the outside world of Cyrodiil always felt a little dead, for lack of a better word. For example, if I were to travel from Anvil to Shadenhall, or Bruma to Leyawiin, I feel like not much would happen. Sure, I would encounter some leveled beasts, but Not really any events that made the outside feel like it was an active or real place. And just to clarify, this is a gripe of modern Josh. Younger Josh was absolutely blown away by this world and marveled over every leaf and plant. Oddly enough, I think Skyrim has the opposite effect. If I walked from Markarth to Riften or Whiterun to Solitude, I'd encounter a bunch of random events, and the wilds of Skyrim felt so lived in. Sure, there were remote areas, but the roads were as active as I feel they should have been given the circumstances of Alduin's return and the Dragon Crisis. But the cities themselves felt empty and lifeless to me. Probably the lack of NPC discussion. Even despite some of the aspects that come up short to modern standards, the landscapes and vistas of the cities still get me to this day. Coming out of the wilderness and seeing something like Shadenhall or Skingrad on the horizon just strikes the right chords with me. And looking down on the Imperial City is a feeling that I can't even describe. You can feel the love in every gust of wind and every sound of the birds. The devs at Bethesda love Tamriel, and I feel that love every single time I play Oblivion. As I stated in my Why I Love Fallout New Vegas video, I'm not one for ambient music in games. I prefer to listen to the sounds of the environment, the wind blowing, trees rustling, and just the sounds of a living world. So my review on the music here may be a bit on the weirder end because my experience with it probably isn't the intended experience of the writers, composers, and musicians, but one we're all familiar with nonetheless: memes. While the Morrowind and Skyrim communities are full of their own memes and inside jokes, I have never seen a game, even down to its music, be memed as hard as Oblivion. I have quite literally seen hundreds of hours of content from people making direct parodies of it, to the Oblivion NPC clips you see of people around the world. I know that's a horrible way to bring up the music and remember it, but to me, that is wholesome content, and I've been enjoying it for years, and I will continue to enjoy it.
But in your face I behold the sun's companion. The dawn of Akatosh's bright glory may banish the coming darkness. With such hope, and with the promise of your aid, my heart must be satisfied.
The story of Oblivion starts with a pivotal moment in the history of the Third Empire of Tamriel, with the assassination of its emperor, Uriel Septim VII, voiced by the wonderful Patrick Stewart. In this tutorial section, you are introduced to the dialogue system, Vaelendreth, the Blades, Vaelendreth, the Emperor, Vaelendreth, the Mythic Dawn, and Vaelendreth.
Oh, look, an Imperial in the Imperial prison. I guess they don't play favorites, huh? Your own kinsmen think you're a piece of human trash. How sad. I bet the guards give you special treatment before the end. Oh, that's right. You're going to die in here, Imperial. You're going to die. Imperial criminal scum like you give the Empire a bad name, you see. You're an embarrassment. Best if you just disappeared. Hey, you hear that? The guards are coming. For you.
So let me break it down real quick. The Emperor is the aforementioned Uriel Septim VII.
For 65 years I've ruled as Tamriel's emperor.
The Blades are not only his bodyguards, but also his intelligence agency. They act as spies and infiltrators across the provinces of Tamriel. The Mythic Dawn are a cult dedicated to the Daedric Prince of Destruction, Mehrunes Dagon, and led by the enigmatic and powerful mage Menkar Cameron, voiced by the legendary Terrence Stamp. On a side note, does anyone else find it weird that some Daedric princes have mononyms for names and others have first and last names? I mean, I get names like Nocturnal, Azura, or Mafala, but Mehrunes Dagon and Hermaeus Mora, why do they have family names? Is Mehrunes Dagon the son of Frederick Dagon? Was Frederick never a successful prince of destruction because he decided to go to business school instead? I just don't get it. And that was quite a tangent. My apologies. Moving on. Once the Emperor is dead, the The dragon fires that hold up the barriers between Mundus and Oblivion are effectively dissolved, which leads to an invasion of the mortal realm via the Oblivion Gates. You, as the character, must take the Amulet of Kings to Wayne Priory outside the city of Coral, to Joffrey, the Grand Master of the Blades. The Amulet of Kings is a magic piece of jewelry that helps maintain the barrier between Mundus and Oblivion, and the Mythic Dawn need to steal it to keep it out of the hands of the Blades so they can continue opening Oblivion Gates. The character must then team up with the Blades to find Martin, voiced by the legendary Sean Bean, the last surviving son of the Emperor, an illegitimate bastard who's been in hiding all his life. Apparently, he wasn't the son of Empress Kalavaraya. She was apparently a bitch, so Uriel went and had two other sons, Calaxes and Martin. This man fucks. Calaxes went missing, and Martin was off having wild parties with other poor orphans. By the time you meet Martin, he is a priest of Akatosh currently living in the city of Kvatch. When you arrive, the city has been destroyed, and there are supposedly 3 holdouts: a refugee camp being protected by a small force of city guards, the Chapel of Akatosh, and Castle Kvatch. Upon fighting your way through some level Daedra, you make your way to the chapel where Martin is. You can usually convince him to come with you right then and there, but I always let him go back to the refugee camp while I save the city so he can enjoy a little bit more of not being the Emperor. After that, though, you go through the undercroft of the chapel to get into the gatehouse to let the soldiers in. Upon storming the castle, you find that Count Goldwine is dead, but at this point the gate is destroyed and Kvatch has been cleared out. The city is destroyed, but at least the ruins are safe, and what's left of the city's population will be safe. Relatively speaking, of course. Upon returning to Wayne Priory with Martin, you find that the Priory is under attack by the Mythic Dawn, who have made off with the Amulet of Kings. Upon regrouping with Joffrey and defeating what's left of the Mythic Dawn at the Priory, Joffrey shares the bad news. You all head to Cloud Ruler Temple, the Fortress of the Blades, and one of the safest and most defensible positions in all of Cyrodiil, and architecturally speaking, one of my absolute favorites. I think 99% of players will branch off and explore the world of Cyrodiil and all of its inhabitants at this point, from guilds to side quests, Daedric quests, and villages. So let's start with some of the side quests I'd like to highlight.
Hello. You haven't seen my sons, have you? They went off into the forest to fight those monsters, and I'm worried about them.
I'm not going to go into a ton of detail on each of these quests for 2 reasons. If you've previously played Oblivion, you don't need me to rehash details that have likely been known to you for almost 20 years. And if you haven't played Oblivion, I would prefer you go into these quests blind, as they are quite intriguing and fun. And in some cases, their rewards are nothing to scoff at. The first quest I'd like to mention is A Shadow over Hackdirt, a quest about a missing Argonian woman named Dharma, who went missing making a supply run to the village of Hackdirt. Her mother, Seed Neas, is a prominent merchant in Coral and owner of northern goods and trade. You'll find the village quite odd compared to most Imperial villages, so good luck. The next quest I really love is The Killing Field, which is also acquired in Coral. In the Grey Mare, a tavern near the castle, you'll meet a man named Valus Odil. His farm was recently overrun by goblins, and his sons, Rallus and Antus Odil, have left the city to try and go clear them out. He's worried about his boys because of the great number of goblins. The only advice I can give you is to try and keep both his sons alive. You won't regret it. Up next on our side quest adventure is Caught in the Hunt. This quest is acquired in Breville. A local woman named Ursan Locke is worried. Her husband, Alaron Locke, has gone missing. He went to visit an orc named Curden Gro Dragal, and ever since then he's been missing. This quest may not have the twist or easy explanation you're expecting. Be ready for anything. The name of this quest isn't an accident. I'll say that much. Another standout quest to me is Zero Visibility. This one I won't say much for fear of revealing too much, but suffice to say the village of Ailswell has seen better days, but certainly not any days as interesting. Now, I could sit here and talk about more side quests like A Brotherhood Betrayed, Order of the Virtuous Blood, Mazoga the Orc, or even Corruption and Conscience. All of these quests I love and could gush over for days. But lastly on this little list will probably be my favorite side quest in Oblivion, A Brush with Death. A local painter in Shadenhall has gone missing, Ryth Lythandis. He disappeared from his painting studio without a trace. That is all I will say, but if you allow me a little bit of indulgence, I will say when I first played this quest as a kid, the concept truly blew my mind, and to this day, it remains one of my fondest Oblivion moments. Daedric quests represent favors you can do for the Daedric princes of Oblivion in return for Daedric artifacts, items that can really enhance your gameplay and abilities. Because the quests and their rewards vary so wildly, I won't bother going into each and every one, but I would be remiss if I didn't recommend my favorite. Whenever you have the chance, do Sheogorath's Daedric quest. It's easily one of my favorites, and it can be done very early in the game. I think the required level is like 2 or 5 or something like that. It's not hard to get access to.
You've spoken to the Mad God, joy of joys. Are you elated, excited, aroused? Blessed are you. Blessed is he.
Welcome to the arena, good citizens of the Empire. You came to watch a fight, and a fight you shall have. It's the blue team versus the yellow team in a battle to the death. Lower the gates!
I think Oblivion is quite funny in terms of guild quest lines. For the most part, I like all the stories in theory, but execution I find it can be a bit lacking. Mainly the Mages Guild. I think the likes of Oblivion and Skyrim have an issue with this. You can hardly ever cast a spell, then you can suddenly be Archmage. Maybe that's just me complaining about something I have no experience with. I'm not a coder, programmer, or game dev, so I'm not sure how building these systems works. I just always thought it was a bit odd, even if I understand not gating off content to the players. Oblivion toned down the number of joinable factions from its predecessor Morrowind. Sadly, in the heart of the Empire, there is no Imperial Legion questline. Being a die-hard Imperial Legion fan, this has always bummed me out, even to this day. That being said though, I actually think the guild quests in this game are some of the best narratives and experiences in all of the Elder Scrolls games. Feel free to disagree, but that is my honest opinion. The main guilds and guild quest lines are as follows: the Arena, the Fighters Guild, the Mages Guild, the Thieves Guild, and the Dark Brotherhood. I'll give a brief summary of each, what I like, dislike, and why you may want to join them. Starting with the Mages Guild. The Mages Guild is not just a guild, but an academy. The guild is pretty much the go-to authority on magic in Tamriel. While House Telvanni of Morrowind, the Sigic Order of Artaeum, and even the College of Winterhold in Skyrim may disagree, I believe the Imperial Mages Guild does more to advance magical knowledge than any other institution in Tamriel. What I like about this guild is you actually have a reason to visit each and every guild hall, a reason to get to know the people who inhabit it and what school of magic each guild hall specializes in. It's one of my favorite things about the Mages Guild, and I think it does that better than any other group. I already spoke about what I dislike about mage questlines in general in Elder Scrolls, so I won't reiterate here. But the questline is very good. You'll be unraveling the mystery behind the rise of the necromancers in Cyrodiil and a plot to destroy the Mages Guild by the Order of the Black Worm, led by Mannimarco, a dangerous figure who's been behind the scenes in Tamriel for a long time. He is not one to be underestimated. If you're looking to understand the deeper mysteries of magic, learn exciting spells, and maybe create some of your own, the Mages Guild is for you. The Arcane University is such a fun place to explore, practice your spells, and meet fellow students as you work your way up the ranks from Associate to Archmage. Pivoting over to the opposite side of the combat spectrum, let's talk about the Fighters Guild. Tamriel's premier guild of mercenaries and warriors. The Fighters Guild takes on contracts all over Cyrodiil, killing monsters, protecting villages, and generally being the muscle of the common man. At least the common man who can afford them. What I like about the guild is the characters, Modron Orion in particular, but many others as well. He's just the biggest standout to me. The story is also quite good, with the guild crossing blades with the Blackwood Company, another mercenary faction undercutting them and taking all of their contracts, leaving the guild on the edge of ruin. What I dislike is the lack of reasons to visit other guild halls. For the most part, you only need to ever visit Coral, Shadenhall, and Anvil. As someone who has done the Fighters Guild many different times, I couldn't tell you anything about the Bruma Guild. I know the Skingrad Guild apparently does a lot of goblin hunting, but never once to my knowledge do you ever get a goblin contract out there. And for the Leowen Guild, I think you're sent there once to round up some members who are being drunk and disorderly, which I think is also the name of that quest. Despite this, the story is an interesting one, and I've always enjoyed going through it. I just really wish we had more reason to see the other guild halls. I won't say more of the story, I leave that to you to experience or re-experience. If you're looking to hone your skills as a warrior, travel across Cyrodiil fighting creatures and protecting the common people, and making some coin in the process, perhaps the Fighters Guild is for you. The Thieves Guild is Tamriel's most elusive coterie of pickpockets and cut purses, a criminal organization that is nearly impossible to stamp out. Led by the Grey Fox, the most skilled and notorious thief in the world, and he is gearing up for the most ambitious heist in history. What I like about the Thieves Guild is that it has a focus on stealth, but not so much violence. They do not condone murder or violence against innocents in their missions, at least not against other people. They are thieves, and their missions range from petty theft and heist to quite literally playing pranks on the guards trying to arrest them, and I love every second of it. They are not assassins, they are thieves, and they are very die-hard about that. I think the focus of that requires you to use your head a bit more in how you approach missions. I thought it was a great time each time I've done it, and I hope you'll agree. What I don't like is how easy some of the targets of thievery were to make. Without diving too much into it, you're required at certain times to make certain thresholds of gold and fenced goods, the highest being 1,000 in total, which you can literally do your first night as a thief. It just didn't feel like it was that hard of an ask. If you walk around Cyrodiil and you go to a shop and you think those prices are unfair, if you'd rather just swipe a dagger off the counter or rob the entire shop blind when they close up, then the Thieves Guild might just be for you. Slink in the lower corners of society and stick it to the people being weighed down by riches. The Dark Brotherhood is also a stealth-based faction, but instead of focusing on theft and tricks, the Dark Brotherhood are a family of cold-blooded killers. Be it times of peace or great upheaval, there's no shortage of people willing to perform the Black Sacrament and cough up the required coin to hire these skilled assassins. The Dark Brotherhood is currently suffering from some internal strife, and you might be the one to help them. Take on contracts and spill blood in the name of Sithis. What I like about the Dark Brotherhood is everything. Quests, characters, rewards, lore, and the great twists and turns that the story takes. They are truly some of the most chilling moments, made even better by creative ways you can complete the quests, and the bonuses on your contracts are usually pretty great. What I don't like... I guess this is a hard one, but for the sake of being true to the format, I guess my only issue is the lack of post-story content, but aside from the arena, that's pretty common among Questlines in Oblivion, I think this faction is perfect, start to finish, aside from the death of a certain character. If sneaking around is your style, but thievery seems a bit too bloodless for you, then the Dark Brotherhood awaits. Sithis and the Night Mother would be pleased to have another child spilling blood in their name, and if that doesn't interest you, then the opportunities for coin should get the blood flowing, no pun intended.
You sleep rather soundly for a murderer. That's good. You'll need a clear conscience for what I'm about to propose.
Lastly, we have the Imperial City Arena, home of Cyrodiil's gladiatorial combat games and the only functioning microphone and speaker system in all of Tamriel to my knowledge, the arena is exactly what you expect it to be. What I like about the arena is that it doesn't encourage or discourage any aspect of play. Mages, warriors, archers, sword and shield, two-handed sword, or a dagger and spells, they're all welcome as long as you're willing to fight to the death for roaring crowds. The battles are interesting, and you will be challenged on your rise to the top, from pit dog to grand champion. What I don't like is the arena rules against looting your enemies. I can rip this guy to shreds in combat, but taking his gear is a step too far. I think we all know that someone at the arena is pocketing that gear and selling it on the side. Just give me the Grey Aegis shield. That's all I want. If the thrill of gladiatorial combat excites you, and the idea of becoming a celebrity to the people brings a smile to your face, and if honorable combat in Tamriel's greatest arena strikes your fancy, then you should consider joining the Imperial City Arena. Your adoring fan and fans await.
By Azura, by Azura, by Azura! It's the Grand Champion! I can't believe it's you standing here next to me.
The guilds and factions of Oblivion are among the most exciting stories ever woven in the Elder Scrolls series in my opinion. But speaking of narratives, let's return to the main quest.
Emperor Uriel Septim? You think the Emperor is my father? No, you must have the wrong man. I am a priest of Akatosh. My father was a farmer.
This section will be a bit abbreviated for my own sanity, but once you arrive at Cloud Ruler and join, or not join, the Blades, they fly into a flurry of activity, protecting Martin, making sure Cloud Ruler is defended, and doing what Blades are trained to do: espionage and infiltration. The quest Spies involves eliminating some Mythic Dawn spies that have learned Martin's location and have been spying on Cloud Ruler Temple. Captain Stefan will assign you this quest. Another quest is called The Path of Dawn, and that involves finding all 4 copies of Menkar Cameron's commentaries on the Mysterium Xarxes in hopes of finding the secret location of their Shrine of Dagon. Dagon's Shrine involves you having to acquire one of the Mythic Dawn's most holy artifacts. Bruma Gate revolves around you helping the city of Bruma close an Oblivion Gate. Once the guard know how it's done, they can hopefully close any others that appear. Allies for Bruma is probably one of the game's least liked quests. It involves you visiting each of Cyrodiil's major cities and closing Oblivion Gates outside the cities in hopes that they will send soldiers to Bruma, because at this point a pivotal battle is fixing to take place around Bruma, and they need all 10 soldiers Cyrodiil can muster to defend the city against the Daedric onslaught. You'll be tasked with finding some powerful items as well, with the hopes you can create a portal to Menkar Cameron's realm, Gaia Relata, or Paradise. There isn't much left after what I've mentioned, but I will leave those to you to discover or rediscover so that I can wrap this section up.
When the next Elder Scroll is written, you shall be its scribe. The shape of the future, the fate of the Empire. These things now belong to you.
My great hope is that this video encourages you to head back into Cyrodiil and relive some of your favorite adventures this game has to offer. This game is like seeing an old friend for me. A friend that held me up when I was feeling down, a friend that kept me company when I was feeling lonely, and a friend that encouraged me to develop my love of fantasy. A lot of my love for fantasy and storytelling spawned from the Elder Scrolls, and Oblivion is what allowed me and my brother to enjoy these things together, because in my heart, this game is more than a game. It was how I bonded with my brother Brian and learned he too had an appreciation for the same things I did. In a way, Oblivion is part of our family, an indelible mark in the hearts of 2 brothers, leaving behind a host of adventures, stories, and quality time that I wouldn't trade for anything. We're all grown up now, and we still live very far apart from one another, but no matter the distance, we have always remained close in our hearts, and a lot of that we owe to this game. This ugly, goofy, janky, bizarre, and wonderful, amazing game. If you have never played this incredible game before, I hope I can convince you to take the trip to Cyrodiil so you too can experience why I, and so many others, love The Elder Scrolls IV. Oblivion. Woo! That was a long one. You know, this part of the video is always my favorite to do because it means when I'm filming this section here, this little conversation or this direct message I like to give to you, the viewer, that means the video is already completed and I just got to cut this up, add it in there, and then I can put it in Adobe's media encoder and then have it ready for upload and release. This video really means a lot to me. I think I grew a lot as an editor with this one, and I felt the same way with the Why I Love Fallout New Vegas video as well. This one I think I was able to put a lot more of myself into it just because there was so much nostalgia in this game for me, and I imagine if you're watching this there probably is for you as well. Oh man, I'm very grateful that you, if you're watching this, that you made it this far into the video. Truly, I am. I think it's crazy that you would spend so much time here with me. And I just want to give a couple of thank yous. My Why I Love Fallout New Vegas video is at like 9,000 views, and I just shot up to like 200 subscribers, and that's crazy to me. That video, I was hoping maybe it would get on the high end, like 200. You know, I worked on it for a month, and I worked on this video for about a month. I have no expectations of any success or a certain number of views, so that happening just, it blew my mind. And I wanted to give a special thank you to all of you that watched that, and to all of you that may watch it after this. If you've not seen it before, I'll make sure it's in this little outro screen or whatever. I don't know the terms on YouTube. I'm not very good with this whole technology thing. And I want to give a very special thank you, of course, to my friend Lena, who designs the thumbnails on this channel. If you saw the thumbnail in any video I've ever done, she's the one that did it. And I always forget to thank her in these videos because, admittedly, I'm thinking about myself 99% of the time. Jokes aside, though, thank you so much, Lena. And my brother, who is mentioned so frequently in this video, ever since I started making gaming content on YouTube, he's always been like, hey, you should do an Oblivion video. You should do an Oblivion video. So here it is, Brian. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you, the viewer, enjoyed it as well. And if you wouldn't mind, please consider liking the video, consider subscribing. Wouldn't hurt my feelings, but more than anything, even if you don't do any of those things, I am just so grateful that you took time out of your day to be here with me right now watching this, and I will see you in the next one.